Hey everybody, this is Javi, and you are watching the Multi-Psychic here on YouTube. I'm a psychic and intuitive medium who focuses on divination and storytelling to help people overcome generational trauma. And so, happy Tuesday. This video is the daily messenger video for Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. And so, I am this is a really hard subject that we're going to be talking about today. This is actually, for some reason, um, Spirit wanted me to talk about addiction. Talk about addiction, um, and to focus on that. And so, what ends up happening with addiction is that it's just a lot. For one, let's talk about exactly what it is. So basically, addiction is basically when you become literally like psychologically and emotionally addicted to a substance, whether it be drugs, alcohol, you know porn or whatever it is. Like it basically like the whole thing about addiction is to feel good. And as far as like the physical parts of it and the neurological parts of it, it just sets off this, the first time you use something, it sets off the feel good receptors in your brain, like the dopamine, of your parts of your brain, the dopamine is rather, excuse me about that. And so what ends up happening is that like when you use something for the first time, the high is so intense, or the feeling of that high is so intense that people start to chase that high afterwards, and to the point where people don't know that it can devastate your life. And because what people don't know is that when it comes to that high, the first time is the only time that intensity will happen. It will never be that way again. It has devastated families, and devastated entire household. People have lost their jobs. People have spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on whatever they're addicted to. It's because, for the most part, it's about escapism. You're escaping your reality. You're escaping your trauma. You're escaping your thoughts. And that's one of the reasons why people, you know, um, go through the whole thing of addiction. The withdrawal is much worse depending on what type of drug you're on. There are people who can actually die from withdrawal. There are people who get the shakes, they get headaches, they sweat, they get tremors, they have nightmares. So it's like addiction is a really messed up thing, to say the very least. It is very devastating to watch, and especially when it comes to certain types of drugs, and you can feel like see the person and actually go through withdrawal. Um, and so the reason why um, Spirit wanted me to bring this up today is because, I myself have struggled with addiction. I am a recovered alcoholic, and there's a lot of other things that that I struggled with as well. And a lot of it stems from trauma, and a lot of it, stems from a lot of, you know, a lot of my own fears of not wanting to look at things, especially when it came to my drinking. And so, what I ended up getting here from the cards is that like it's a long journey, and we are to like pay attention to, and be honest with ourselves. And so this video is basically those who struggle with addiction, and struggle with admitting to themselves how bad things have gotten. So the intuitive message I received is that there are a lot of people within the spiritual community who struggle with addiction. There are people who struggle with drugs, alcohol, sex, porn. Even when I got the message from Spirit, I saw like like a naked person, and I was like, "What is that about?" Um, and it's basically being that person was being naked, basically being vulnerable, being honest with themselves. And for some reason, I was to focus on sex addiction as well. So that's probably what that is. And so what ends up happening with addiction and spiritual individuals is that their minds become clouded. Their minds become clouded. They feel like they are, and to back up a little bit, I'm going to back up about this. So there are people, and I said this in the other video. There are people who are indeed spiritual workers, and they use certain drugs, whether it be psychotropic, um, or like psychotropic drugs, such as weed or LSD or whatever type of drug they use to actually connect with spirit. There's nothing wrong with that at all because there are people who can actually do that as part of their practice and it's part of what they do, and that's perfectly fine as long as it like gets them enacted the spirit. That's on them. So I'm not being a dare program here. I'm not being a dare program coordinator by saying like don't do drugs and da. I'm not about that at all because there are people who are able to give phenomenal readings and connect with spirit or connect with whatever deity they're working with, and they are going to do their thing. That's one thing. But what I'm getting is that there are certain people, who are not using drugs to not to connect with spirit, but but to run away from whatever issues or their realities that's happening. And so I know that I have an addictive personality, and so I have the tendency to do that myself. As far as using these things to run away from, not exactly run away, but basically just check out for a minute. But I guess that's running away. Um, and so we are to be honest with ourselves. Spirit is basically saying that we are to be honest with ourselves about our addictions, whatever that is, and basically to ask ourselves what happened and why we are doing it. And that's what, if we're even in the process of even admitting that we are an addict or an alcoholic or whatever our vice is, because what ends up happening is that with certain things we are connecting with spirit when we misuse, a natural substance, or we misuse, something natural such as sex or food or anything, pertaining to um, our natural resources. Even exercising can be an addiction. You know what I mean? It's about running away and feeling good, and basically you're setting off those receptors, that the feel good receptors in our brain. A lot of us too, like when it comes to, and let me back up as well. I don't know. I know that there are papers and research on this, but even people with ADD or ADHD have a tendency to use substances because of the low arousal that we have in our mind. So we get bored, and there is nothing for us to do. A lot of us, do indeed, use something, and so a lot of us are indeed spiritual people. And so what ends up happening is that we end up disconnecting from spirit. We end up using our substance to disconnect from ourselves, to disconnect from our higher selves. We end up disconnecting from our spirit team in general. And so when we're doing that, we leave ourselves open to spiritual attack. We leave ourselves open to fall into other traps as well. There are people who get so drunk, get so high, you know, and then they end up, and because they're sensitive, they end up leaving themselves open to like a spiritual attack or some sort of low vibrational energy, end up being attached to them, or they end up getting into trouble, and it becomes, a huge problem to the point where they can't even like connect with spirit for the most part, at least not in a way that is authentic, in a way that is very, um, in a way that's like affirming and and healthy. You know what I mean? So I'm getting that a lot of us are being called not to use substances anymore, or at least abuse substances anymore, and to connect with spirit to when we are able to do so, connect with spirit to understand, or to at least find out what happened and why we are doing it. Because what ends up happening is that when we don't end up being honest with ourselves, and we and we disconnect from spirit, We can actually be blocking our blessings. We can literally be blocking our blessings that spirit has in store for us. There are many people in the spirit community, in the spiritual community, who are being called to not do that stuff at all, do not do that stuff anymore, because by doing by disconnecting with spirit, you're disconnecting from source, you're disconnecting from not only your blessings, but your ways of communication, your downloading. And for those who work with alien energy, you are literally like disconnecting yourself uh, from your um, from your extraterrestrial family as well. And this is really, and this is another thing. If you are a time traveler, or you do astral projection, how are you're leaving yourself unsafe, because now you have your spirit actually like left your body while you're in that vulnerable state, or you're disconnected from that state, and now you're leaving yourself open for anything to like enter your body, or anything to attack you. So it's just you're not able to like do very much as far as your energy work if you are messed up in any way, shape, or form. And I'm being told to tell people this. You know what I mean? I'm being told to tell people this because if you're a highly sensitive person and you're an astral projection, you're connected with and you're a channeler, and you're traveling to different dimensions, and you're energetically traveling to different dimensions and stuff like that. You can't do very much of anything. You won't be protected as much, or if at all. So it's just something to be aware of when you are when you are using something, or you plan on using something, or you're doing something that is not, you know, um, spiritual, or will enhance your spirituality in some way, shape, or form. Because, like I said before, there are people who can use drugs safely, use certain psychotropic drugs to like connect with spirit. I know shamans, they have a tendency to use peyote and other sort of um, psychotropic uh, drugs, that are natural and are from the planet, um, or from the earth rather. So they do it carefully, and they are able to tap into spirit, or tap into a higher plane that way. Is not exactly required, but there are people, different tribes who do this, especially when it comes to through initiations and things like that. There are people who are using drugs that way, to connect with spirit. And there's nothing wrong with that, nor is there nothing wrong with doing it every once in a while if it's not an issue for you. But when it comes to working with spirit, and working with and the people who are like usually astral projecting or time traveling, in any way, shape, or form. There's just certain people who just cannot do it, and that's perfectly fine. This is a time for you to actually check those addictions in some way, whether you're getting help or asking spirit to relieve you of it, or a combination of both. Um, that is your best bet. Is also when it comes to generational trauma too. There, if you have family members who are devastated by drugs or alcohol, I feel, and this is me, I feel that it will be like a bit of a dishonor to practice, um, while under the influence. You know what I mean? I personally cannot do that, especially when it comes to his with family members of mine, you know, struggling and actually dying, of alcohol addiction. So take that into consideration as well. In order for you to heal, in order for you to heal that part, this is a time for us to actually start breaking that cycle of addiction, so your family members can see it, so your ancestors can see that you are getting better, and they on in the spirit world could be getting better as well. Because that's just because um, and they can aid you. You know what I mean, to get better if they choose to do so. And I pray that that makes sense, and I pray that I'm not preaching to you in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just being told by spirit to be careful. And if you are being led to teach your story, especially when it comes to addiction, because there's a lot of people who are teachers, a lot of spiritual people who are teachers, and they can use their story of addiction to be of service to others, to basically be, like, for lack of better terms, a cautionary tale by saying, like, look, um, this is what happened to me. This is how things went down. Um, I got better, and this is what I'm telling you now. You know what I mean? So, but in order for you to get to that point, we are to basically like, what is it about this vice that is very hard to let go of? What is it about it? Like, what does it do for me? You know, um, what does it do for me? So that's where I'm going with that. And if that resonated with you in any way, shape, or form, by all means, just let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know. I'm just asking Spirit if there's anything else. This is also a very hard conversation for me because I have family members um, who are very much, in, like, I have family members and who are drug addicts in some way, shape, or form. They end up ending their lives, and so both on my mother's side and my father's side. So, like, when I see when I got that message, I'm like, why am I getting this message, Spirit? But if it resonated with you, then by all means, just say so in the comments. Let's have a discussion about addiction and everything. So what I got here, as far as the cards, again, I'm using the Mythical Shaman Oracle deck, and so what I got from this card is the Lightning card. I'm getting tell the truth. Yeah, tell the truth about your addiction. Tell the truth. Tell yourself the truth. If you are struggling, be honest about that, because there's a lot of people who are spiritual. Again, there are people in the spiritual community who are doing drugs and who are like abusing whatever vice they're abusing, and they're not being honest about it. They're not being honest with themselves, or they know that they have an issue and a problem, but they feel that they're going to be they're going to be shamed for it. There's still some stigma in regards to addiction. There's still that stigma that somehow people can stop when they want to, if they tried hard enough. Like, willpower is still a thing out here in these streets, as far as people being addicted to something, and all of a sudden they can stop cold turkey. Depending on the drug and depending on the person, it's just not that simple. It's just not like that. There are people I know that it took me 5 years to stop drinking at one point, and I've been um, it's since I want to say since 2005 I have been sober. In the first year is extremely hard. It's extremely hard to give up something or give up a behavior that is very gratifying. And that's what another thing about addiction that we don't talk about: the gratification, the instant gratification that you get when it comes to your vice. It makes you feel good, even for like a short period. It makes you feel good for a short amount of time, but then after a while it starts to become an issue and a problem, but but it's been there for you. It's been there for you. It's been your friend. It's been there when you were sad. It was there when someone died. It was there um when your spouse broke up with you. It was there when you got divorced. It was there when you lost your job. You know what I mean? It's the addiction to the escapism, and it being there, and it not shaming you, or at least that's how it starts off as. But when it start like messing your whole life up, that's when it starts to become a problem. There are many times when I mean, I've seen people in my life, who get upset if you were to even mention the fact that they drink too much or there's something going on and you don't have a limit and so and what ends up happening is that person becomes extremely defensive. There's a lot of people who become extremely defensive when it comes to addiction or when it comes to being told that they have a problem. And so the first step of addiction is understanding that you have a problem, that understanding there is something going on here that is no longer serving you. Okay, so the lightning is basically, when I think of lightning, in fact, like when I read the cards or the guidebook for the cards, this is basically the lightning card is like, this is where you see your true power. Either it can be of benefit to you or it can be very destructive. And so the what it does not surprise me that this card has come up. That's the first card that came up, because what ends up happening, I mean, what it's saying, not what ends up happening, what that card is basically saying is that the first step, the power comes from being honest with yourself. And if you, and like, either way, whether you're honest with yourself or not, you still have the power to go one way or the other. The power is still within your hands. The power is still within you being honest with yourself. And if you're honest with yourself, in regards to your addiction, that is basically the light at the end of the tunnel right there. But if it could either go another way, you can also say like, no, I don't have an issue, and you're going to end up going back to how you were, and it gets worse from there. It gets worse from there. I got like all kinds of gnats in here for some reason, but basically, that's what this card is. It's the lightning card. It is time for us, especially spiritual people who are being called to do something else. And especially you're being called to elevate, you're being called to do something, to be honest with yourself about where you are, and be honest with yourself about what you're truly giving up, especially if you receive the message from spirit, especially when you receive the message from spirit that that you were meant to give up certain vices, and you were meant to do something to give that up, because it no longer serves you. And I'm going to be real honest with you too. Like, it's really hard to give up something that has been in your life for so long, that has made you feel good for so long. But you are to ask. That's which is why you are to ask Spirit to help you replace that vice with something else that is a benefit to you, which is a benefit for your spiritual growth. And this reading is for spiritual people who are struggling with addiction. It's not just for any old any person. Even though people can watch the video, this is definitely for spiritual people who are struggling with letting go of something that no longer serves them, especially something they're addicted to. So this is what the lightning card is saying: is that this is time. It's time. It's kind of like a tower card almost, where it's so yeah. It reminds me of the tower card, because it's now or never. And again, like, people are at a crossroads here, um, in the month of September. This is like the month where you're like, okay, now we have to make decisions. Now we have to make decisions about whether or not we are going to step up and allow ourselves to elevate. And so this is it doesn't surprise me at all that we now have the journey card. The journey card is basically saying like, look, this is not cute. This shit is not cute. It's not going to. We're not going to sugarcoat here. Spirit is basically saying like, look, it's not pretty. It's not glamorous. The road to recovery is not, glamorous at all. It's not what you see on television. For depending on what you are letting go of. Sometimes you're going to have shakes. Sometimes you're going to be irritable. Sometimes you're going to be falling into a deep depression, because by the end of the day, it's not as if you're giving away, you're walking away from a friend, you're walking away from something that has been there for you, quote unquote, has been there for you for quite some time, depending on how long you've been doing it. Depending on how long you've been doing it, okay, you're walking away from something that has eventually have become like an emotional crutch for you. Basically, um, spiritual people are being asked to we're being asked to go through the journey of recovery so we can start the healing process and to truly look at our stuff and to truly look at ourselves as to why, excuse me, why this started to begin with and why it's lasted for so long. You're gonna do you're gonna be end up you're gonna end up doing some deep meditative work, some deep meditation, and having a spirit ask you why you are doing this, why, what happened, what am I running away from, why, what is it about this vice or whatever it is that gives me comfort? What am I? Why is it? What is it doing for me? Is it filling a void? Is it helping me escape from something that I am to face eventually? I know that when I became an alcoholic because I wanted to escape the abuse I was going through and wanted to escape all my insecurities. When I was drunk, I was someone completely different. I was more confident. I was more, flirtatious. I was more outgoing. I was more friendly. I mean, I'm friendly now, but I was even more so when I had alcohol in my system. Like I had no inhibitions whatsoever. I'm the complete opposite of that, or was the complete opposite of that when I sobered up. It wasn't the point when I was a blackout drunk, but I was embarrassing nonetheless, and I was sick nonetheless, and I was spiritually sick, not just like physically sick. Like I was definitely using that as a crutch, to cover up my own loneliness and my sense of insecurities. So, what are you doing? Like whatever what's going on with you? What are you doing it for? Now, I know that like there are people who smoke or drink because of anxiety. I know that people like use certain drugs at least to like help with their anxiety. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you are doing it for a medicinal purpose. Or medicinal purpose, excuse me, because not everybody can handle you know certain like pharmaceutical drugs. But as far as everything else, this is not glamorous. It is like, and I get it. And it's really hard, and there's anxiety around giving stuff up. That makes you feel good because you're like, what else am I going to be doing? What else? What? How else am I going to cope with my boredom, with my depression, with my anxiety, with my sense of my sense of confidence? What am I going to do? Because this has been in my life for so long. So we are to admit to ourselves that we are in pain. We are this is an issue. This is a problem. This is hindering my sense of purpose and hindering my life and hindering how I see the world. Is literally like not exactly destroying your life because I'm not getting that like certain things are destroying you. But I am getting that a lot of this stuff is like whatever you're using is hindering you to the point where you're not serving your purpose as a spiritual advisor or a spiritual person, a psychic medium, a channeler, whatever you're meant to be doing, whatever your addiction is keeping you from it. It's keeping you from it. And so you're being asked to go on this journey of recovery, to shed and to peel, away like all the dead skin, peel away the mask and the dead skin that came with it. It's not going to be cute. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be pretty. But at least you're going to get to the bottom of what made you, what made you pick up or what made you smoke this and or drink this. Whatever your vice is, whether it be food, um, sex, like what is it? Because by the end of the day, like it is hindering you. This form of escapism you're using is hindering you and keeping you from your blessings. There's also the rattle. The rattle is a cleansing tool. Okay, it's a cleansing tool. This is, I'm being told to read the book. I apologize. This is the first for me. So the book says here, the rattle, the invitation here says, the rattle comes to invite you to work with the tools of spirit, but be careful. They are very sharp and can hurt you and others if they are not used mindfully. Set your old tools aside and take up the drawing instruments of spirit. You are consciously stepping into partnership with the divine. This is the time for courageous deeds. Don't let your hesitation get in the way of your expression. So basically, what the card is saying, and what I was getting intuitively, is that you are not to do this by yourself. You're not to go through this journey by yourself. Don't say, I can do it by myself. I can do it on my own. I don't need nobody. Because what ends up happening is that once you start just saying that, I can do it myself and try to go cold turkey or feel as if you're not to get a support system or not have a support system, you end up getting into trouble. So basically what Spirit is saying is that put down your tools. Basically, and when I think of tools, I think of the ego, because the ego is also a tool. It's a tool that we use to show how important we are, how smart we are, and how strong we are. Okay, so basically, this card is saying, the rattle is saying that in order for you to get better, allow spirit to help you. I know that when I was involved in 12-step programs, I was the most one I was active in, at least the most ones anyway, were S groups, which were sex addicts groups, and a group for sex addicts, and then there was AA. I was in a bunch of them, to be honest with you, but AA was the main one that I was like a part of, above all else. And so we went through the 12 steps, me and my first sponsor, and the one thing that they always stress is that this is a spiritual program. This is a spiritual program. You are to have support. You are to have support from God. You will get support from God. You are to get support from your sponsors, and you are to go to meetings as much as you possibly can. Okay, doing it yourself in isolation is something that um, is not suited for anyone who is in a, it's not suited for those who are just starting out. It's not suited for anyone who is just starting out. I've seen so many people, um, in fact, years ago I used to date someone who was like, I will do it myself, and he always ended up using. So we are to set aside our egos. We are to set aside our egos in order for us to get better. Those who are spiritual and yet dealing with illnesses or addictions, we are to be to get better, and we cannot get better by ourselves. If it means going to rehab and seeing a counselor, that's something that you are to do. If that means being dragged to drug court, to be put into rehab, and so you can get your shit together, that's another thing too. Ask spirit for guidance, and everything will fall into place. Okay, and you sincerely do it. You sincerely, go into a meditative state and ask Spirit, could you help me? I'm ready to give this up. I am ready to do this set. I'm ready to give this up. I am ready to surrender my addiction. I am ready to become clean. I am ready to become sober. Please, Spirit, I pray that or whether it be Spirit or Creator or the Orishas or whatever, you know, um, deity that you or energy that you use, for your spiritual practices. Ask your spirits, your people, whether it be your ancestors, wise ones, guardian angels, archangels, ascended masters, you know, ancestors from this lifetime and many other lifetimes. Ask them for assistance. Ask them for assistance, and they will give you the tools necessary. They will bless you with the tools necessary for you to become clean and sober. But our egos are not to be put into this, because um, the moment that we start acting as if we can, do better by ourselves and do better for ourselves, that's when we start to get messed up. And I know what it's like to have the mind of an addict. It's not cute, especially if we don't want to give something up. We were the first ones to say, "I'm gonna do it on my own," or we give spirit some half-assed, prayer, full well that we don't want to give something up, or we have no intentions of giving up our vices. So this is literally the time that the rattle is literally saying, like, that's why the journey card came up, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. This is not the time. It's going to be hard. This is not the time for our egos to be in the way of stuff. Okay. So 40, 41. Also look up the number 45. Look up the number 45. I don't know why Spirit told me to do that, but to have y'all do that. Um, but basically, this is the seer card, and the seer is basically one that sees. I'm getting those who work with spirit, who are able to have the gift of foresight. This card actually came through because there's a lot of us um, who are hindered. Our drugs are hindered. Whatever the device you're using, it hindered your ability to see and connect with spirit. To literally see spirit, it definitely messed that up. You're no longer able to see through the future. You're not able to time travel. You're not able to do the work, the spiritual work that you are meant to do, because your brain is very foggy and clogged up due to your addiction or your addictive personalities. You are no longer able to serve because of your addictions and how bad it has gotten. And so what ends up happening is that the moment that you stop using, your abilities will come back. Your gifts will come back. Your gifts will come not they'll come back tenfold. You'll gain clarity. That's what I'm getting from this card too. Clarity. You will get clarity once you start becoming clean or sober. Yeah, I'm just getting that you'll become better. You'll become better. In your vision, it'll become less clouded. You'll get more downloads. You'll get more downloads as a result of you not using, or you becoming honest with yourself. You become more spiritually connected, and you start to do all the work, the unpeeling and unraveling. And once you start doing that, you'll start to realize the the reason behind your addiction, and then you'll start to do more work, especially when there's trauma involved, because again, a lot of people start using because of trauma. You start using to escape the thoughts, that were brought on by trauma, the negativity and the vision. Some people, most people have PTSD. They don't want that, or they have nervous breakdowns. They don't want to like hear those messages, see those visions. So they like tap out and they start using it as a result because they don't want to. They are scared. They are afraid of what they are seeing and what they are experiencing. It makes them more than uncomfortable. It makes them afraid. Spiritual people who are meant to use their story to help other people, it takes you to it takes clear seeing and experiencing um, the depths of your trauma in order for you to be of service to somebody. Drugs are not an option at this point. They can be a part of your story, but as far as you using them to escape, you're no longer able to do that without causing yourself some problems. So basically, you're being told to stop using. There's a lot of people who are being asked to stop using in general because if if not, then you're going to end up messing up. Not even messing up, but basically like sabotaging your power and sabotaging your gifts. It's time for you to step into your own power, which is why you're being asked to not use. And this is actually for people who are being asked, the spiritual people who are being asked to not use drugs especially if they are using it in an addictive manner. If you know that you are not able to use those drugs in any way, shape, or form and not stop, then that's a problem. Yeah, I'm just getting like, yeah, it's just like this is a lot. Like, this is a lot. The crows are, last but not least, you got the crow. And the crow here is a very powerful animal. It sees all, and it sees the entire universe, and it's just known for its wisdom. The crow is very wise. You're being asked to tap into your inner wisdom. Tap into your wisdom and co-create with spirit. You'll be able to co-create with spirit and work with spirit more effectively when you are a clear channel. When you're a clear channel. I'm just getting like straight up and front out like we are to be honest with ourselves. Those who are, you know, use drugs or have used drugs in the past, we are to be honest with ourselves about why we're doing it. And to know that we are hindering our power, we're hindering our spirits when we're doing that. Again, this is not a fucking dare program. I want y'all to know this, but I'm just letting y'all know like that's what spirit is saying because there's a lot of spiritual people out here that are abusing, that are basically ignoring spirit or trying to find some way to finagle, you know, the methods of basically like trying to find ways to like get around the message or find compromises, around messages that they have been receiving a long time ago. I'm one of those people. If I want to do something, I would do it regardless. But by the end of the day, it's going to mess you up. You're going to become very uncomfortable because you know your higher self is attempting to emerge. That's another thing. You're working with your higher self when you are clean and sober and doing spirit work. You're not doing this by yourself. Your higher self is also a spirit guide. And so if you are hearing your higher spirit saying like not to do this or um, or you're just getting that inkling that not to do this, that something's wrong with this, that's your higher spirit saying like, look, I'm not wishing you to do this any longer. We cannot work together if you are compromised, if you're spiritually and physically and mentally incapacitated, you know what I mean? Like you're compromised, and I can't work with you. I can't even tap. I can't even tap with the spirit. I can't be of service to anybody. Your higher self is using other people, or or your higher self is using you to to elevate. You and your higher self are trying to be on the same page, and they want to be on the same page with you, and they cannot because you're using. And so the crow is basically saying like this is a time. That's why the seer and the crow came, side by side, because they're like, in order for you, we need you to see, like the seer is your higher self. I need you to see, so you and I can work together. So you and I can work together with spirit. And if you are working side by side with spirit, then we're able to like work together and be the person that we are meant to be. These are beautiful cards. I just got them on Friday, and I'm still like learning them and getting used to them, but they feel very natural, and I love them. Yeah. So the staff here, already automatically, I'm thinking like the wand. When I think of staff, I think of leadership, magician. So basically, the image, the what I'm getting from this card is that it's time for you to step up and be the spiritual leader. But we can definitely see what the book says. Again, I'm learning. So forgive me. Yes. So you know how to flow. The invitation is like you know how to flow easily between polarities, how to weigh all possibilities, and instinctively select the right path. Trust your inner wisdom and take the first step on a journey that your heart has already embarked on. Use the power of the staff to unite what appeared to be divided and find a delicate balance between will and surrender. Yeah, so basically, like, be a leader and be yourself. Be yourself. Come together. Your higher self, your 3D self are to come together to work with spirit, because you're like you already like on the spiritual level, on the soul level, they're already where you're supposed to be. You're already where you're supposed to be. Now it's time for you to basically do the work. I would say do the work necessary, or basically like do the spiritual work, take the steps necessary for you to basically be the badass that you are. You know what I mean? Like be the spiritual badass that you are. It's time. It's time. It's time. You know what I mean? To do the work. It's time. Ain't no way you should be. We're not playing no more. It's time. You know what I mean? So the staff is basically saying that it's time for you to tap into your inner wisdom, tap into, that inner wisdom that you always had within yourself, and become the person you are to, but in order to do that, you are to be clean and sober. You are to be a clear channel for spirit. I'm not, if you, I'm not saying that, like I said, it's not a dare program. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you how to feel like, but I am giving you what spirit is, how spirit is giving it to me. And spirit is basically saying that in order for you to be of service, like fully of service, you have to be a clear channel for spirit. You have to be a clear channel um, to do this to do this work and to continue to elevate the way that you are, that you are meant to. You are meant to be. Um, to be clean and to be sober, and get a hold of your addictions and to face what your addictions, what made you like kind of act this way or be this way to begin with. It's not a behavioral thing. You're not a bad person, but there are people who use their addictions to escape trauma and to escape thoughts that are inevitable, and there are thoughts that are going to keep coming back until you start to do to go through the recovery process. That's the recovery process in and of itself is your journey. It's your journey. So again, thank you so very much. That's all I have. Yeah, I'm just getting. I'm sorry. I'm just getting reach for the stars. Reach for the stars. Reach for the stars. Basically, reach for the stars. And in order to do that, be mindful of your addiction and how it's affecting your life. Go through. Be honest about where you are. Go through the journey process. Go through the journey. Go through the journey. I love these cards already. They're just like hitting everybody with the truth today. Everyone's with the truth today. It's hitting everybody with the truth. It's time to be honest with yourself. To go through the journey necessary. It's gonna be ugly as fuck. I'm gonna be honest with you. You're gonna be snapping and crying on people. You're gonna be triggered. You are gonna be detoxing in some way, shape, or form because your body and your mind is used to the drug of your choice. If you are to be away from certain people for a little bit, or to walk away from toxic people, or walk away from people, um, or even talk to depending on the person, who the person is, talk to them and tell them, like, look, this is what I'm going through. 9 times out of 10, you will be all right. But be honest with yourself about where you are and what's going on, because you're not to do this by yourself. And once you start working with spirit, what's going to end up happening is that, because a lot of you are very powerful, a lot of you are very powerful seers. A lot of people out here are very powerful as far as their visions and their abilities. Once you start becoming clean, you'll start to collaborate with spirit. You're not to do this by yourself, so you're going to be working with spirit over time. You're going to be getting downloads. You're going to be getting a lot of visions. You're going to be getting a lot of um, a lot of stuff. Don't be surprised too. Unfortunately, don't be surprised too that once you start becoming clean, depending on um, how heavy your abuse of a certain drug or substance was, don't be surprised that you'll start to see visions, or you'll start to get um, or you'll start to see is hallucinate, you know, and you start to have a problems differentiate reality from what you're seeing. Those are just be aware of that. Be aware that there are people. I know certain people. I don't know whether or not he's alive, but I know years ago I saw somebody with wet brain. They drunk so much that their brain was severely damaged. Their brain cells were gone and they could not function. And that's what you call a wet brain, when you drink so much where to the point where your brain cells are pretty much fried. Uh, and that again, that depends on how bad it is. But I'm just getting that look. This is also, a I see a lot of y'all getting better. I see a lot of you getting better. I see a lot of you, like, may trip and fall, but I feel like if you're sincere enough, you're going to get better. and you're going to be able to use your story, your recovery story to help other people. So that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If it resonated with you in any way, shape, or form, please, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss another video. Also, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on my website, um, thebowtiesecond.com. You can go there and schedule an appointment, and we'll go from there. So thank you again so much for watching this video, for allowing me to serve and share your energy with me. I really appreciate it. So on that note, talk to you soon. Peace.